Podcast.
All right, good evening, and welcome to the Broke Man's Podcast. Today I have Brittany, and I met Brittany, what is it, 6 months ago?
Yeah, probably give or take. Probably a little longer, but
Brittany is a solid worker. One of the first people I met who don't curse. I don't curse either. We find better words, we use better words. But most of all, working with you was great. You were patient. You're always kind. You knew what to say. And when it came to youth, you knew how to say no. And you knew how to hold the line. And you were always patient and you were mellow. There was no yelling or overdoing it. You stayed right there every time. So it was nice to meet you. And when I met you, I was like, either she's been working with kids her whole life or she's a veteran when it comes to kids. And she's a mom. So which is it?
well, I mean, it's a little bit of both. I went to school. I have my bachelor's degree in human services, and the reason I went to school was to work with kids. I've always thought kids are the future.
They are.
And if you can get to kids who are wayward at an early enough age, I feel like it's easier for them to turn around than, say, either working in the criminal justice system with adults or, in the prisons or anything like that. They've kind of made their choices, they've made their beds. But if you can get a kid to see the light, I feel like you have an easier way about it. And, I grew up in a big family, and honestly, some of my siblings did not make great choices. They have criminal records, stuff like that. And I think sometimes if they had someone on their side, maybe they wouldn't have made the choices they made.
Or they could come back from those choices and make better choices and learn from those choices, I guess. That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah,
Sorry about that. All right,
okay.
so we're going to kick it off with a little bit of gratitude from each one of us. And I am thankful for the delicious Culver's burgers I just ate, and my good friend Levi here brought it for me. And I'm thankful for the ability to work through being sick. And I wouldn't say pride, but I'm happy that I don't curl up in a ball anymore and can't move or do anything. When a man's sick, we tend to we tend to regress.
The man cold.
Yeah, we tend to regress. But I like the fact that I can be productive now, and I go out and finish my day like it was nothing. So I don't want to say pride in that, but I do.
I feel like I have to applaud you.
I appreciate that. I do. It took some work because oh man, when I tell you, I feel like my world was crumbling apart and everything. Laid in the bed, I couldn't get up, I couldn't move. You got to come bring everything to me on a tray in my bed. It was horrible. Until I figured, I was like, oh man, women get sick every month, and they go through and they do more than what is possible every month. And once it clicked in my brain, I was like, I got to do better. I got to do better. So I learned that, honestly, I learned that trait from women because they're always sick and they'll take care of us. And they so happen to get on their period when we're sick at the same time, and they're still the ones working through it. Even if they get on their period and they're sick too, and they still work and they still go through and do things for the family. So shout out to all the moms and all the mothers that do that. I learned something, and I was like, you know what? I got to do better as a man. So anytime I'm sick, one foot in front of the other, I throw my legs out of bed. I'm like, I got to get up and go and do and continue to do and become. So yeah.
I would say thing I'm thankful for is the fall coming, the new weather, the cold air. I like it, so I'm excited for it to get a little bit colder here too.
And I guess the thing I'm grateful for is honestly the invite to catch up with some good friends. A husband who is supporting this, keeping the kids at home.
Hey, what's his name?
Joseph.
Joseph, shout out to you. We appreciate you, Joseph. We see you.
Yeah, I guess that's and a car that allowed me to get here today. I always feel like I have to. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's crazy construction that I had to drive
everywhere.
through. Yeah,
All the time.
yeah, I
It's
hate
a
it.
lot. I'm not a fan of it, but hey, I'm happy I'm alive.
Exactly.
So today we want to talk about modern day motherhood and make people aware of it. What can you tell us about modern day motherhood?
Well, I mean, I grew up in, I guess, a traditional family. My mom was a stay-at-home mom most of my life, but I also came from a family of 11 children, but 2 had passed before I was born. And my mom pretty much had to be a stay-at-home mom because my dad was a truck driver, so doing all the traveling and stuff like that.
That's tough.
Yeah, so it almost was like a single mother a lot of the time.
And how many kids were there?
9.
Oh, your mom was at work every day.
Well, yeah, she was definitely had her work cut out for her.
She's going through the war zone with a hatchet. Oh man.
Yeah, so
Wow.
that's kind of what my
Who can do
idea
that?
was.
Who can do that? Moms.
Very special people. Not everyone can do that.
Shout out to the moms again.
Yeah. So, I guess I looked at my life, like even before having kids. I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do, and that just did not pan out. Unfortunately, my husband ended up with some injuries from being active duty military.
Oh, okay.
Deals with some mental health and actual physical restrictions, I guess.
Yeah.
So that kind of shoved me into the workforce. But also a blessing that came from that was that's what paid for my school. Is if you're a percentage disabled, you can use UW schools and get your degree. So to round back to what I think modern motherhood is, honestly just rolling with those punches, because you never know what the next minute will bring, and you just have to go along with it. Yeah.
I want to pause that and kind of go back on what you were saying. Shout out to Joseph, right? Mm-hmm. Shout out to Joseph for serving. I've never done it. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
And while he was serving, sorry for interrupting.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
You're good.
while he was serving, you were a stay-at-home mother?
I was. He did not see combat. He just the work he did was just very body taxing. Ugh. And it kind of messed up
Man.
his hands, and he got tinnitus really bad.
Yeah.
So yeah. So we had 2 kids while he was in the service.
Okay. How tough was it? How was it being a stay-at-home mother? Versus being a working mom.
No, I knew. My Joe always says, well, you always think the grass is greener on the other side. He's like, you never seem like you're happy. But honestly, being a stay-at-home mom, because I did it, I think my oldest was 3 or 4, 3.5 when I re-entered the workforce after having kids. And then my youngest at that point would have been 1.5 years. And it was tough. Well, and it was also tougher because I was doing second shifts. So at the time I was working 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. So I would be mom all day, and then I would work all night, only to wake up the next day and repeat every day. And until my kids started school, I liked it because, up until dinner time, I was with them all the time. And I like that special bond you get when you're with your kids during their most waking hours. No. And as crazy as it was, it worked for the time, but eventually just did not work, and then I kind of bounced around.
Yeah, that in itself sounds extremely hard to have to work after watching your kids for a full day. I imagine there was a lot of mental strain with that. How did you keep yourself sane in that? Because I know myself, I would have slipped. At some point, I would have gone loopy or something.
Well, oh, and I didn't even say what I was doing. So I was a janitor. I've done janitorial work, cripes, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And most of it, doing it at night like that, I worked by myself. So people are like, oh, aren't you scared? I'm like, no, I got quiet. Like, I don't worry about, what I'm facing when I go in the parking lot. I listen to so much music, so many audiobooks, so many podcasts. Like, that was like my favorite thing about working then, because you go into autopilot, you're cleaning a lot of the same buildings all the time, so you know exactly what to look for. And honestly, it was in a weird way exhausting physically, but mentally it was like so good for me to like have that time.
Have that silence.
Yes.
Oh man, yes. I've done a job like that when it came to overnight working.
Sure.
But when it comes to motherhood, modern day motherhood, what would you like to make people aware of?
I think it's the fact that we have, more challenges than say our parents or our own mothers did. For one, we don't have a lot of the same luxuries, like, everything's skyrocketing in price. So to have two incomes in a home is, more commonplace now, because the idea of being able to afford to have someone at home is, becoming non-existent at this point. And, I did not choose a career path that's going to make me $1 billion.
Yeah.
I do work that makes me feel fulfilled in, giving back.
Okay, I like that.
So, yeah. And I don't know. I guess I can't get enough of the idea of kids, because now I've worked with kids in some capacity for coming up on 2 years.
Yeah. How do you feel about when it comes to work, how do you feel about the stigma of a mother can't be a mother and have a career and be a wife?
I hate it.
You call bullish?
Yeah. I would definitely, and maybe it would be different if I'm going to be like a CEO or some of a company, which that is not in my cards or not a want that I want to have. But I have, unfortunately, you just know you're going to miss things.
Yeah.
I try my best to balance everything, between sports for the kids or, maybe a class picnic or, you're going to miss something. So you have to be kind of choosy on what you think is going to make the most impact for you to be there and plan accordingly. So, yeah.
Planning accordingly. How often do you have to do that? Do you have to write out the weeks?
It depends on the week. There has been weeks for sure that we have had to do that. Even now I have 2 kids who are in a sport that the schedules sometimes clash. So me and Dad have...
Okay. All right. That was about to say, that's crazy. How do you manage to make both of those?
You can't.
You can't?
No.
No? There's no magic wand?
Like, for example, we had a game in Port Washington, and then I had to go up to, where was it? It's like up past
Somewhere.
Appleton. Yes.
Yeah.
So clearly, I even Googled it. We were an hour and a half apart.
Oh, man.
And yeah, you watched soccer this week. So next week you'll go to soccer and I'll go to football.
Hey, that's a team.
Yeah.
I like that. That's a team.
That's what we have to do. So I don't know. I feel like that's also different is we definitely don't want our kids to not have the opportunities that
Yeah.
maybe we missed out on as kids. So if our kids want to do it, we are gonna make
it
it
happen.
work. Yeah.
Okay. Having that and having working now a full-time job, does it affect not affect the home life, but does it make you miss being at home?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I guess it's a little different now because this is our first year. We have all our kids in all day school.
Yeah.
But you have to keep in mind, like I said, my first two, I was able to stay home for, a year and a half of my middle's life and like over 3 years for our oldest. And I had my youngest when I was working full time.
How do you throughout all that and where you're at now, how do you find time to are you still into growing as a person?
Oh, sure. Like, you should never stop growing. If you stop growing, then I don't want to say you're wasting life, but you are definitely not progressing like you should. Like, we should always be wanting to make ourselves more.
Okay, I like that. Absolutely. What are the pros and cons of being a working mom?
I mean, a pro is definitely you really begin to realize what's more important. Like I said, you pick and choose like your kids' activities that you want to be at. You value your time more instead of just, because I feel like, especially when you're home all the time with your kids, it's so easy to just be looking at a phone and not enjoy all the little things. Being present, yes.
Absolutely. Like, I was going to ask, how do you stay connected with your kids, like, on a day-to-day basis, especially as they're getting older and more distant, I'm assuming, because that's just how teenagers get.
Yes. Especially now that I actually have a teenager. It's crazy.
You made it.
I made, well,
made it.
we still have lots of teenage years, but we made the first hurdle. It's finding those little moments. So if I can, I'm the one who's either picking them up or like taking them home for practice. So I can ask him like how practice went. We have that one-on-one time. It's finding small moments where you can really be one-on-one. I saw, it was like an article recently that you should have at least a solid 5 minutes, which sounds like nothing, but I mean, you can do a lot in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Where you should connect with each one of your kids individually. And I mean, we've played a quick card game or something like that, but it's taking that time to refocus on each kid.
So what scares you the most as a mother, being that?
What scares me most as a
I mean,
mother?
you got the internet out here.
See,
You got
that
social
doesn't-
media out here.
I mean, I guess we'll see as time goes on. My oldest, I mean, he has a cell phone, but I know he's a good kid. Like, he's a very solid kid. My 11-year-old makes me a little more nervous about that stuff. And honestly, my youngest, he just wants to play Minecraft and Roblox. Like, I'm not too worried about that. And usually he's doing that with, like, a parent sitting next to him because his computer is next to dad's computer. And they'll play together.
Okay.
So, yeah, I guess the thing that actually does scare me is just as they get older, I'm thinking like a claw, like your claws are in them, but that's not it. But yes, you don't get to you don't have as much power in what they do or shouldn't do because they're becoming their own person.
And that's what your job is. I said our job's real confused. I'm so sorry. That's what your job is as a mother, and then as Joseph as a father to prepare them for that.
Yeah.
And I imagine like letting them go and off into the world they go, and they got to face the world now. I imagine that is scary, but knowing that who you are and who Joseph is as parents, which how you guys raise them and they're prepared.
Right.
But it's still, I imagine it's still a scary thing to have.
For sure.
I still can't believe I said hour, but go ahead.
So with that, that comes to my question about what morals do you want to ensure are instilled in your children for when they grow up, and things you want them to carry that you can push along to them.
Sure. So we are a Christian family. You know, along with our religious views, we don't drink, we don't smoke. We are supposed to be very mindful of, you know, the entertainment we consume, because once you put it in your brain, it never fully goes away. It could pop up in a dream. It could be a daydream. Like, it could just get there any way possible. So we're very mindful of what we consume in front of our kids or what our kids consume.
I like that.
And so I just hope they continue on with that.
Okay.
Because as long as they do, like, that right there will help them make better choices and help them really avoid a lot of hardship that, you know, people who are heavy into drinking, smoking, or drugs could definitely face.
Is there a lot of is there not a lot of hardship, but is there a lot of on the go as a mother, as a working mom too? Is there everything on the go, or is there never a dull moment?
I mean, everything's a season, right? So
Yeah.
I always tell people this year's been our craziest year.
You have a teenager.
Well, I do have a
There
teenager.
you go.
But like on average, I was working like 45 to 47 hours a week, like all summer, which was kind of different for me. I would be at work by like 8:30 in the morning, and with summer, the kids would sleep in, so I wouldn't even see them till I came home around dinner time. So, I mean, that was hard. I have 2 kids in competitive sports, so we're always going with that. And I'm very involved with church, so we end up in, you know, we're at church every Sunday, so that takes up time. I am in an organization that deals with women at church. So we usually have an extra couple meetings outside of church for that. And yeah, I try to maintain a social life, but that doesn't really happen.
I can imagine. I imagine it's tough.
Yeah.
I do imagine that it's tough. What would you like your kids to say about you as they get older? What mark do you want to leave? What things would you like them to say about Brittany, their mother?
Honestly, as long as they know they were loved through any choice they made,
Yeah.
I feel like I did my job. That they never were like, oh, I made this choice and my mom no longer loved me.
And I think with that, it can be your reaction to it. So, like, how you react to certain things can definitely have a play on, like, the amount of the effect of something that is happening or has happened. How do you react when you're overwhelmed with something with your kids, or how do you put yourself back into the place of being a mother versus being someone who's just reacting to an action?
Honestly, it's being able to recognize you've hit that point and taking a step back. If it's taking a moment and honestly going and having a quick little cry, that happens. I remember there was one time my kids were driving me nuts, and I don't remember what the situation was, but I told them, I'm going to clean. And I kicked them all outside. I'm like, you cannot come back inside until I clean this, because I was probably asking them to clean with me, and they refused. And I'm like, you know what? I can't see your face right now. You know, I still love you, but I cannot be with you this very moment. I'm going to do this, and then we can regroup.
With being a mom, I don't know how far back you remember, but is it painful and does it hurt the fact after you have your baby, after you have your child, and a couple of weeks go by and you have to go back to work, or you don't give it up, do you think mothers get enough time with their kids after birth?
So I will say this. I kind of had to go back and forth. So the job I had when I had my youngest,
Yes.
I was only granted the short-term disability, which was 8 weeks.
Is it enough time?
So I actually chose the FMLA, and so I
Okay.
took 12 weeks of unpaid leave because that was the only way I could stay home longer while still keeping my job.
What could America do better when it comes to that? What can we do better as a society when it comes to that? Do mothers not get enough attention paid towards that specifically? Like that bonding time. It's important.
It
It's
is.
very important. Even for a father, I would imagine. But that bonding time with a mother and her child, and just I have to go back to work, so I have to basically you have to get snatched from arms, and I got to go work.
Yeah. Well, I was very fortunate. I had a husband who was at home.
Shout out Joseph.
Yep. Shout out Joseph, who took the reins at that point. Because I think it would have been that much harder, the idea of my son being in someone else's care for huge amount of time, and he can't tell me if something went wrong. I just remember, and I mean, I had a C-section, and we have a 2-story house, and I lived in the living room for a few weeks because I couldn't handle the stairs. It was just too hard with carrying a baby. And there was one night I literally cried all night because I knew I was going to have to go back to work. And it broke my heart. I just couldn't rest. I mean, I sobbed all night. And it was like, after that, I was like, okay, but I had to let those feelings out. And I didn't need to share it with anybody. I just had to be at peace. And it was really hard. And especially, I mean, mothers who are nursing, which I was blessed enough where my boss is kind of like, do your own thing, because I was still cleaning nights and he couldn't police me like I'm alone in a building.
Yeah.
And so that was very fortunate. So I was able to still pump and handle all that because, when women are going back to work at, 6 weeks or sometimes less,
Body's not even healed.
nope, your body's not healed. You're trying to make milk for your baby. You get maybe 2 pumping breaks during your 8 hours. And there's a lot of women who they can't figure out why they failed. Well, society failed you, and then you have to factor in, now you have to pay for formula because you weren't able to secure all that because you didn't have that time with your baby. So thinking of that as a society, that's like a huge one. I mean, I think you don't even fully set up like milk supply for like 12 weeks where it regulates itself. So, I mean, that's huge. And I know there's like a shortage for daycare. So where is your baby even going to go when you have to go back to work? Not everyone has family support. And yeah, it's just the price of all that stuff as well. Then you kind of have to go back and forth. Is it even worth going back to work now that I have this kid at home? So
That's a lot.
it is a lot.
That I want to empathize, but I can do the best I can. We talked about that earlier. We can't. We can as men, we can only kind of be there, right? There's nothing. We have no idea the magnitude of hurt that it could bring on a mom to only be with their baby for a couple of weeks and it's just off right back to work.
Yeah.
You got to do this. You got to do that. You still got these bills. There's nothing. Ugh.
Yeah. And I mean, there's many people who don't get any kind of pay when they're off. Like I said, I didn't. But I mean, we still had an income because of my husband's disability. So it's not like but I mean, women can't. I knew people who were back at 4 weeks because they had bills to pay and they're either husband didn't make enough or they were a single parent or just crazy.
That's what I find when I see people or my friends are having kids. That's when I see that community. All right, welcome back. As we began, we left off with why community is so important. With having community, you have people to reach out to, people to help you out, people to bring you food. Food when you can't, especially if you're a mother or a father and you can't leave the house and a lot of things are going on in the house. You have people to bring you food. I believe that community can be a great lifeline if people just connect in the right ways and realize that their differences is what makes them stronger. It is. But back to motherhood. We could talk about community for days.
Yeah.
Back to motherhood. What are some of the joys of motherhood?
I mean, honestly, there's actually a lot of joy in
Do tell.
motherhood. I feel like that. I remember my oldest and my husband at the time, unfortunately, was working third shift. And the first time I saw our oldest smile, like, I can still see it in my head. He's 13. And I mean, especially when you're in the thick of it and it seems like all your kid does is cry, sleep, eat, and poop. And then all of a sudden they just look at you and they just have this gummy grin that spreads across their face. Like, oh my gosh, I guess I'm doing this for something. Like, it's all worth it all of a sudden because my kid recognizes that I'm here for them because they're reacting to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's big.
It
That's
is.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That's very wonderful. Wow. And you get that not once but twice or 3 times?
3 times.
Mm.
Yeah.
The joys of that. Okay. How do you stay consistent as they grow? I mean, you get to watch them from here. And, yeah.
Honestly, the consistency kind of changes because as they grow, they don't always want you around. Yeah, but honestly, I feel like I'm doing pretty good because honestly, my kids do want me around.
Yeah.
I think I must be doing something right.
Okay.
They don't just come in and like go hide all day, every day. They can still feel like they can ask me anything. Especially, sorry, Zoe, if you listen to this, go towards the realms of puberty and stuff like that.
Oh, the scary
Yeah.
realm. And you have a teenager.
I have a teenager and one who's very close to doing the girly things.
Wow.
And well, that part is terrifying to me, but but yes, I'm glad because I did not have that growing up. I was terrified to talk to my parents about that kind of stuff.
So do you think society has gotten better with that now that we're able to, now that people are more aware of raising kids and bringing that factor in of awareness and being able to talk to their kids and be open and honest?
Honestly, I don't know if it's necessarily societal. I feel like it's more acceptable than it used to be.
Okay, I like that, yes.
But it's also, I took what I experienced growing up and I definitely made different choices to make it where my kids did feel they could tell me anything. Or, they could say anything that they needed to say, except maybe I've gone too far because my kids sometimes will say some really inappropriate, stupid stuff, but they're like, oh, this is funny. And I'm like, okay, cool. Maybe not do that. Not everyone loves a penis joke, even if you're a teenager. I don't need to hear that. Keep that with your friends. But yeah. But the fact that that's something I never would have said to even my siblings growing up. I was just.
So the fact that you've been through all that and you're changing and you're putting out something different than what you got when you were growing up. Now that you are here where you're at now with your wonderful 3 kids, your wonderful husband, shout out Joseph again. How do you balance being Brittany, being mom, and being Hey Honey?
How do I balance
Honey
it
means
all?
wife.
I got
Sorry.
that's what you meant. Jeez, why do you? I like how you feel like you have to keep correcting yourself. I guess I'm gonna just do it one at a time
All right,
because
go
I
for it.
don't
Let's
feel
go.
like you can. So as for wife,
Yes.
honestly, I sacrifice sleep. Once those kids are in bed, it's like me and husband time. We might watch a movie
I like that.
or find a way to reconnect.
I like that.
Because it is so easy to be like, you're just so tired at the end of the day, you just go to bed, and he doesn't have the need to wake up like I do, and you can really spend days if that's how you lived.
Yeah.
Like,
So you guys are intentional.
we are very
And you
intentional.
still put in effort. I like that a lot.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, you have to. We'll celebrate 17 years of marriage in November. So
Yes.
we got married young. I was 20, he was 21. And
Still growing.
And always. And like I said, if you don't keep growing, then you're stalled. And I don't want to say you're a wasted space, but there is a reason our brains are fascinated by learning, and you should never stop learning about yourself, learning about those around you. I learned stuff all the time about my
Growing
husband.
perspective.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you can you can cut it.
I like that. With that growth, it's if you stop growing, you're not reaching your potential.
Correct.
You're not hitting the highest point you can reach as a person, and I think that's disappointing. And I think if you don't see that as disappointing, then once again, you're not willing to grow,
Yeah.
So put in that effort. Keep growing. Effort's the biggest thing for it.
It certainly is.
Yeah.
Do you how has effort shown to you, like, do your kids see the effort you put in with them, or is it something where it just seems like you're always there as like second nature for them?
Honestly, I think they know the effort that I put in, because at one point I was working like 45 hours a week.
To come home and do what? Sorry to interrupt you. 45 hours a week, and then that was with the janitor job?
That was a janitor job.
Cooking?
Cooking.
Did you cook?
Oh, no, because I'd be getting home at night.
Okay. All right.
And then I was also a part-time student. So I started school while I was working crazy hours. Well, it kind of ebbed and flowed, I should say. It took me 7 years to get my degree.
Okay.
Because there was a lot happened.
There's a lot.
I worked through the pandemic. I worked through a pregnancy. I went through school through all these things. I went from being in a classroom to online. And I sure hope my kids have some recognition, like, hey, my mom's a real bad bee, that she was able to do all this stuff. And were my grades like fantastic or whatever, the little ties you get when you have really good grades? No, it was not. But I passed my classes. I did well. I was over a 3.0 GPA. And yeah, it was just.
So they see your effort.
That active effort you put in, even it shows without the kids. You did it with work. You put in that effort every single day. You did it with school. You were doing all of that to better your life, not just for you, but for your family. And I think that's awesome.
Thank you.
It's beautiful.
You're very welcome. And another question that I did want to ask you: How do you balance time for yourself? You didn't answer that.
I did not, but I also didn't finish the kid one either. I guess.
Finish the kids one.
Well, yeah,
we are so sorry
we
for
are
interrupting this
all
intentional
over.
mother.
No.
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
So yeah, I finished what it's like to be a partner, I guess.
Okay.
As far as motherhood, it's like I said, those intentional times. I am one. There's three of them, it's finding those small moments. You know, my youngest is still like in that cute cuddly stage. He'll like come sit on the couch. We'll watch shows and do that kind of stuff. He got this huge set of Legos from one of my sister's first birthday, and oh, Mom, come play with me. We played for Legos for like an hour. Like, you know, it's finding those. And unfortunately, my older two are at that stage where they don't like each other. So then it really kind of forces me to be like, okay, who wants to go to the grocery store? Well, I'll come if they're not coming. But I mean, that allows me to have the one-on-one as well. So, I mean, I don't usually fight it like, oh, we all got to go. Like, if I can avoid it. But yeah, it's balancing, you know, not always pick and choosing the same kid, making sure you're dividing your time up. And as far as myself, I don't know. Like I said, I don't sleep as much as I should because I'm putting the effort in my marriage. I don't exercise like I should because that takes time.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I've done better with diet since, you know, like Gary said, and Levi, we all used to work together, and it was a crazy stressful job. And so I made a step out of that role, and it definitely opened up a lot of realm where I could take a step back. I have more responsibility and less stress. It doesn't really make sense. But it also gave me the freedom where I have more ability now to take care of myself. I'm a lunch person. My mom was the same way. Like, hey, let's meet for lunch. And now I'm back in town where I live. And so I can plan like, hey, I haven't seen my friend from this place forever. Like, I'm going to meet him for lunch. And to me, that's so renewing to like, I love connecting with old friends. I'm not super awesome about making phone calls because I'm always tired. Time. I feel like then I only talk about my kids. I don't know, because I'm staring at them when I'm home because they're there. And so, I definitely try to do little things that make a big effort. Like last week, I took myself for a pedicure because I've had a gift certificate since Mother's Day, and now we're in September. So I finally got my pedicure that I've only been sitting on for months. But yeah, just little things. You know, if I am stressed out at the end of the day, I might take myself for a walk. I am a big podcast listener, and being able to kind of blank out is very good for my everything, my soul, my mind, where you're not just keep digging your heels in. You got to just make the break.
Now back to what you said earlier, and congrats on actually finding the time within all that for yourself. That's, because you still need to keep yourself intact as a mom and as a wife. You still need to keep Brittany intact, correct?
Right.
Yes, so that's very important. But back to the balancing being a wife, is communication really the key?
Yeah. I hate to say it because it's so cliche.
Is it though?
Well, everybody, if you don't have good communication, everything falls apart. But it's true.
You don't know how far it goes until you know how far it can go and what it can actually do in a relationship.
Right.
And it is everything.
It is.
Effort in communication is everything.
Well, I mean, think of everything can come back to communication as like such big things as like intimacy, like good communication plays a role in that, and like parenting styles, like, oh my gosh, if you're not on the same page, you guys are gonna really struggle, and your parents are gonna see, or your kids are gonna see that all the time if you're not on the same page.
That dysregulates them too.
Yes.
That dysregulates your kids too.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So go ahead.
Um, yeah, just everything comes back to communication, because it also helps set you up if you're expecting them to be at this place at this time and they're not because you didn't communicate, oh, I have to stay late, I have to do this, I have to do that, then, the other person feels like you're falling short of them. So, yeah, it helps keep everything in balance. Obviously, there's more to a partnership than communication, but it's like, the food pyramid, that is the bottom, that is the base, is you have to have that communication, or else.
I like that analogy, the food pyramid. Yeah. Yeah, the food pyramid.
Because it's going to crumble if you don't.
If you don't have it. I agree with that. I like that. Well, we talked about what motherhood means to you, modern day motherhood, and what we can do better. What can, from your life experience, not even with your husband, because obviously Joseph is amazing, what can you tell fathers out there when it comes to motherhood?
You gotta step in and get dirty. If you I don't know. Let me go back to that. It's if your kid's sick in the middle of the night, it should not always be mom's job to get that kid's bed stripped, or have to run to the store for that medicine, or, stuff like that. Dads can change a diaper. Dad can do the feedings. And yeah, it's also just being more involved, because I always think back of like, I Love Lucy. You got the dads who are smoking the cigar outside of the delivery room. Like, they weren't even a part of that process.
I remember that show.
Because it was a great show.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have every right to be involved as much as they need to be, where mom shouldn't feel
like the burden is on, like, it's not even a burden, like everything is on them.
Right.
Yes.
Like the obligation, I guess.
Yeah.
And dads have, and there's some really great involved parents. Like I said, I wouldn't have been able to go back to work even if Joe wasn't willing to take care of our youngest, like he was. Because, he was making bottles, he was changing diapers, putting in bed at night, all those things. And I was also comfortable with that because I knew it would get done and everything would be okay.
Teamwork.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Teamwork. I like that. What about modern day motherhood? When it comes to modern day motherhood, what would you like to say to the new moms out there?
Just wait 5 minutes because something's gonna change. And it's so funny because all my kids went through like a really carby stage. They would only eat like crackers and pasta and like these like super processed food. And then all of a sudden, like one day, like, oh, I don't like that food. Or, oh, I don't want that. Like their preferences are always changing. Their sleep schedule, especially those first 2 years, are a roller coaster of, oh, they're sleeping great. And then all of a sudden they're back to waking up 3 times a night, needing something. And yeah, if you can ride it out, it gets a lot better and it gets really fun. And, as soon as their personalities start to bud and they become like their own person and not just this thing you're carrying around all the time, it becomes like just even more rewarding because you can see the hard work that you were in the trenches for so long, and all of a sudden the rainbow is like there. And it just becomes like crazy, and it's always hard. Don't get me wrong. It's always some kind of challenge, but it definitely becomes, I don't know if more bearable, but you can have a conversation and be like, well, why did you do this? Instead of just being like, why did you do that? And you get no response except to like a deer in a headlight look, like, because they can't tell you why they did that. So, yeah.
So I can imagine with all that and watching the changes through their life and watching them grow from inside the womb to outside the womb. And now you have a teenager. I can imagine there were a lot of awe moments.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, when you sit there and look at him like, that's my kid.
Oh, for sure. I will say he's a football player. He's in his, what, 4th year, 5th year, something like that. And my kid's tall, but he doesn't have the girth like he's like 5'10" at 13. Yeah, and this last game, this past Saturday, he had like 6 tackles during the game. Okay. Yeah, he's on the line, and I was like, couldn't have been more proud of him. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, if we would have been like my parents who didn't help foster those things, like he wouldn't have been able to find his passion.
I like
his passion is football. Where like my daughter, her passion is soccer. And, was it smart to put 2 kids in travel teams at the same season? No, of course not.
Of course not,
but you also have to find ways to make things more equal.
Yes.
So, she's never been on a travel team before, and I'm like, well, I know it's going to get crazy, but I also don't want her to lose out on that opportunity where, as he's getting into a freshman next year, where it's going to be even harder to have something kind of balanced against that.
Yeah, you got to show your kids that you still see them, every one of them, I would imagine.
Yep, you do.
You got to show them that time and show them that, hey, we see you and you're still here. We are still here for you.
Yeah.
And we're going to work just as hard for you as we did for the other child.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Were there a lot of being that, and that's a lot of balancing. Oh my gosh. That sounds like, that sounds like a lot of balancing. Were there a lot of tears of joy?
I'm not really like one who like cries for tears of joy. I have a lot of pride. I guess that's a better. And yeah, I am dang proud. Like, of my kids.
Okay.
I mean, I just made a post the other day because it was like National Daughter's Day, and my daughter over summer chose to like come to work with me almost every week, like 1 day a week, and she didn't get paid for it. And honestly, it was crazy. All summer long, we averaged like 17 kids, and for work, the ages would go from 5 to 17 for the age range. And it was mostly like elementary school age.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, even like some of our most challenging kids loved my daughter, like called her sister and stuff like that. It like melted my heart. And my daughter was just like the kindest, most patient person. And she definitely helped. Like the staff loved having her there because they didn't have to work as hard. Like, oh my gosh. Like, I feel like she might not be the best athlete, but she has the best heart.
Did you see her more that day?
Yeah. And that was also great because then we had that time. Yes. And I think that came a lot with it is why she wanted to come to work, because she missed me. Because she wanted to be with me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't going to tell her, no, you want to come hang out with me? Sure. Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I like that. And you got to watch who she is and who she's becoming at the same time.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty amazing to see that. I know watching that, you're like, I did that. I did that. Like I fostered that relationship, and now look what's blossoming. That's amazing. Well, we thank you, wonderful Brittany, and shout out Joseph again. Yeah, shout out him. Absolutely. Thank you for coming on the Broke Man's Podcast. We look forward to doing this again.
Sounds great. I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.